Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. With TBC confirmed, it's about time we did a little bit of a class update. Let's take a look back at each class in the Burning Crusade, their performance overall, and hopefully help you make your choice moving forwards. We will be looking at what's new in terms of talents and abilities, leveling, PvE, who's the new king of the meta, PvP has much changed, and tier sets which actually exist for every specialization now. And through this I hope to answer, is your class any better now? Through the Dark Portal today is a much talked about class for the expansion. It has a real reputation for high performance, mainly for one very special reason, and well, compared to Classic it really feels like a whole different beast. Today, we have the Hunter. Let's get straight into it because the Hunter's toolkit was really done over and they were presented with plenty of quality of life changes. First up, we have a new selection of pets to tame throughout Outland as well as back during the old classic content, including serpents, nether rays, warp stalkers, raptors, ravagers, dragonhawks, spore bats, and so on. Existing mechanics in vanilla such as pet happiness, loyalty, training points, feeding, and learning new pet skills are all still features in TBC. Even though the whole pet ability training thing never really made sense to me. Okay, Mr. Kitty. I had this other kitty about 5 minutes ago and I just abandoned him, but I saw him run really fast one time, so now I know how to teach you how to run really fast, so if you could just do that from now on, then that'd be great. Hunters also still need to carry ammo for their ranged weapon, and yes, it still takes up a bag slot. The dead zone will finally die, however, ranged attacks will still have a minimum range. So just for the sake of clarity, in Classic your ranged attack have a minimum range of 8 yards, melee has a max range of 5 yards, so if somebody positions themselves in that 6 to 7 yard range, the Hunter can only hit them with a very small selection of abilities that don't have a range requirement, like Scattershot. In TBC, your ranged attacks have a minimum range of 5 yards, so you will always be able to either melee or ranged a target, which makes an unbelievably huge difference to how smooth the class feels to play. I feel like this isn't really brought up, but it's actually one of my favourite changes to the class. Another big quality of life change is that traps can now be used in combat, freeing up feigned death for other uses, though freezing trap does have a 2-second arm time before it will go off, and all traps still do share a cooldown. What doesn't share a cooldown anymore is arcane shot and aim shot. Arcane shot still dispels one magic effect, also your magic based attacks like explosive trap or serpent sting gain some scaling from your ranged attack power. Finally, from the patch notes here, all pets will now receive a percentage of their master's armor, spell damage, spell resistances, attack power, and stamina. So your pet scales up as you get stronger. This is very important for the Hunter. Oh, also all pets have avoidance, makes them even sturdier on boss encounters, unless you just get unlucky, I suppose. As for their new abilities, we have some really good ones to talk about. Aspect of the Viper was added to solve the Hunter's mana problems in longer encounters, as well as improving their ability to stay in combat for prolonged periods of time in PvP immensely, as it restores mana depending on your intellect with bonuses at low mana. For PvE, you still want to keep Aspect of the Hawk up as much as possible for the ranged attack power and the talented bonus, but this is an option if mana runs low. A new trap was added, Snake Trap. Summon a bunch of snakes that rapidly apply poison debuffs to nearby targets. 50% effective mind numbing and crippling, as well as stacking up deadly poison. Kind of niche use really. Fire traps are good for damage, ice traps are good for CC. Snake is somewhere in between, more on the utility side. Misdirection was added. Hunters always felt like a class leading the charge and pulling for many raid encounters in Classic, especially on Trash. And with this ability, Blizzard cemented them into that role. It only transfers threats from 3 attacks though to a friendly party member. Amazing tool for pulling and getting some good snap threat on a main tank, or mages and warlocks and encounters where they tank. Also very good for when a party member goes AFK for 2 minutes, comes back and finds themselves with a release spirit on their screen. Kill command was also brought into the game in TBC to give your pet something else to do. Activates after you crit to give your pet an extra attack with some bonus damage. This will be part of the rotation that we'll talk about soon. Steady Shot, the star of the show. As for your new abilities, you're going to be getting on a very familiar basis with this ability, let me tell you. Added to give hunters a button to press in between their multi-shot and aim shot, because otherwise all you did was just auto-attack really, and that was a bit boring, right? Steady Shot though, as it turned out, didn't just end up being an extra button to use in between those two other ones, it kinda replaced them. We'll save this for PvE though, because I want to quickly talk leveling. Well, to no one's surprise, Hunters are still really good. Pretty much the trend with pet classes though, isn't it? Aspect of the Viper is super nice again during this phase of the game, which you pick up at level 64. You definitely want to head back to your faction capitals to get this as soon as you can. There are no class trainers in Shattrath by the way, so back to the old world you go. You'll be much more able to use your abilities often too as a result of this. In Classic it often feels like just send your pet in and auto attack away. Repeat, mana costs and worrying about taking aggro were too much of a thing. Your pet is getting some of your stats too, so it's tankier and it's hitting harder. And if I remember right from the pre-patch back in vanilla, BM hunters were just crazy OP, like they felt totally unfair to fight against. Tier 3 hunters are going to be literal gods early game, so in dungeons or solo you're going to be mowing down content like you're playing a later expansion decked out in heirlooms. Hunters in Classic leveling already feel like playing with cheat codes on compared to other classes. In TBC it's that, but with less downtime, so yeah, they're gonna be pretty great. PvE then, here we are. So you may know, but Hunters along with Warlocks are consistently top performers for the entire expansion when it comes to raw DPS. And they do share a similarity when it comes to how they DPS as well, in that it's not exactly the most complicated of rotations. You know I'm going to have to bring it up, the infamous one button macro. In TBC you could take a middle of the pack hunter DPS, given this and tell them to press this and only this, and they would go straight up to near top DPS. It does look a bit complicated, but the idea is pretty simple though. This mechanic already exists in Classic and hunters have had to play around it to optimize their damage. So upon using a shot ability, the swing timer for your ranged attack will be reset, meaning you always want to wait till just after your auto attack goes off before using an ability. Also throwing kill command in there for some extra damage too, effectively removing the human error from pressing steady shot too early and clipping your auto attack. As for multi-shot and aim shot, well, they both only have a flat damage in addition to your auto attack. Steady shot has flat damage and 20% of your ranged attack power scaling, and it also costs way less mana than the other two, though with early game gearing there still should be some variance in your rotation. So as time goes on, your rotation will basically turn into press the button. You don't need to use it of course, but it will certainly help. That's for single target at least. Hunters still have great utility in raids though, through traps, misdirection, distracting shot and so on. Though they're great on the single target, hunters aren't really going to be competing with locks or mages on AoE. Also, it's a pet class and your pet is going to need to be alive and doing damage or your performance will suffer massively. So cue convincing the healers to put the pets on their bars and actually heal and rebuffing them. So with that little bit out of the way, let's talk beast mastery in a bit more detail. First up, Men Pet has changed to now be a heal over time instead of a channeled effect, which is great because, as we have mentioned before, we need to keep that pet alive. We get to pick up improved Men Pet too, giving your pet a mini restorative potion effect. Less reliance on healers is always good in my opinion. Focus Fire for some nice extra damage, Animal Handler for some free hit for your pet, and faster mounts. Really solid. Serpent Swiftness, 20% attack speed for you and your pet, which is great at keeping Frenzy up, which we have 4 points taken in. Your pet, even with an 80% chance, should near have a permanent uptime on this buff. Your pet will also have the ability to train Cobra reflexes as well for even more attack speed. Ferocious Inspiration is the big interest in this tree and a key talent to make BM so good. Again, if your pet's hitting a target, this should be practically permanently up through Frenzy, Kill Command, and your pet's attacks. The best thing about this though, it stacks with other hunters for some reason. Usually there will be 3 hunters with a feral druid and an enhancement shaman, so it's like a shared group-wide flat 9% damage buff, which is pretty good. We have Beast Within, 10% more damage, reduced mana costs, and immune to CC for 18 seconds. Another very solid talent to just improve your performance. In the Marksmanship tree, we have Rapid Killing that knocks 2 minutes off rapid fire. Doesn't quite line up with Bestial Wrath still, but it's still good. Focus Fire means your crits give your pet 50 focus for even more damage and more frenzy procs. Your pet will be pretty much flooded with focus and spamming its abilities as soon as they come up. So I've mentioned pets quite a few times. Over in Classic there are a few choices, but your pet isn't really a big deal. It's often just too squishy to be doing any actual damage. For TBC, the main go-to pet will be the newly introduced Ravager. It's taken for reasons kind of like why Cat is at the moment, in that it has 2 focus stumps, those being Bite and also the new Gore, which has a chance to do double damage. Wind Serpents can be a consideration as well because they have a ranged attack, but usually it's Ravager all the way, as they're just hitting more often, so more chance on uptime on those talents we went over. But that's Beast Mastery for you. Expect to see many a hunter playing this spec, and for it to be a constant DPS topper on single target encounters. There is another hunter spec I should mention too, Survival. This one is more utility focused, though will still do competitive damage. Here is our spec taking the bare basics in Survival to get the really important talent, which is at the bottom of the tree, Expose Weakness, a chance on range crit to increase the attack power of all attackers against the target by 25% of your agility. Bit wordy that. 2 talents should be fine once again, depending on your level of crit of course. Hunters though, do have a lot of crit overall. Other good additions in this tree to help damage are Thrill of the Hunt for mana refunds, Survival Instincts, and a Lightning Reflexes talent that carries over from Classic. This spec is all about stacking agility to get the biggest debuff possible on the target. Over in the Marksmanship tree, instead of efficiency, you can take improved Hunter's Mark, which now works a little differently in TBC actually, now applying a baseline debuff of 110 ranged attack power up to 440 after 10 ranged attacks have landed, and the talent also confers that bonus to melee as well, so 440 attack power for free, way better than True Shot Aura would be for the whole raid, and it's much further up in the tree. It's no surprise that Marksman dropped out of fashion for PvE. At the bottom of the survival tree we have Readiness, which is like the hunter version of Cold Snap, or Preparation, but for all abilities instead. Not too often used unfortunately on the PvE side of things at least, only would really be useful for resetting rapid fire. Other talents just give better bonuses. That's Survival. As mentioned, more utility, still does damage, just less damage than BM. In part due to the spec, in part because you won't be getting the group with all the major buffs to increase performance. Which leaves Marksmanship left. However, for TBC, this spec moved much more towards focusing on the PvP side of things, and we've gone on for PvE for some time now, so I'd like to save it for that. On to PvP then. With the dead zone gone, better mana management, traps in combat, sounds like the hunters should be in a pretty great place, right? Well, kinda. Despite all these changes making the hunter's life much better, the new PvP format that really came into fashion was Arena, and Arena has these things called pillars, as well as a much more compact combat zone when compared to the open plan Battlegrounds or World PvP of Classic, which doesn't exactly favour a class that needs to be at least 5 yards away for most of its toolkit to work. The thing is, hunters do great damage when given uptime, it can just be kinda hard to pull off. What they're renowned for in TBC arenas are being part of drain comps, which does what it says on the tin. The win condition isn't burst or CC chains, though they can help. It's making the enemy healer or sometimes the DPS go whilst just surviving long enough for that to happen and keeping the pressure up. Despite all the new abilities and changes, the main one that the hunter brings is really Viper Sting, which drains a lot of mana over 8 seconds. This effect is reduced by resilience though. Your pet choice in Arena will most likely be the Scorpid. Why? They have a poison debuff that stacks up to 5 times, giving your mana drain some much needed dispel protection, and of course, keeping your pet alive is still a very big deal. But hunter games can tend to go long, like really long. TBC doesn't have dampening, only the Shadow Sight buff is active. I guess it's more of a acquired taste. Some people will like how hunters play out in Arena. Long games isn't exclusive to hunters though, there are other comps that often see this as well, but the nature of mana draining to win sort of encourages these drawn out encounters. Over in the talent tree here, it'll look something like this. Aim Shot now has a 50% reduced healing effect added to it, but it still is 2.5 second cast baseline. Scorpid Sting reduces chance to hit by 5% too now, instead of strength and agility. Improved stings is super important, more mana drain and dispel protection. Combat experience, careful aim and master marksman all add up for some nice scaling, and at the bottom of the tree is Silencing Shot. 3 seconds of silence does some damage, makes up for the hunter not having an interrupt somewhat. Hunters are often seen in 2s with priest or druid, or in 3s with rogue druid. Occasionally you even see double healer hunter, and I really don't envy the people playing against that. I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see a lot of beast mastery in the arena in early days too, before people have had a chance to build their resilient sets up. In fact, I bet there will just be a lot of burst oriented comps in general in season 1 relatively soon after release. It should be a lot of fun, and it would look pretty much the same as the PvE build I reckon, maybe moving a few points around for defense. But yeah, you and your pet get 18 seconds of CC immunity, so that's plenty of time to go absolutely all in and just try and blow someone up. Add in a shaman on top of that with a heroism or bloodlust, and I think you'll really be able to delete people. There's definitely a bit more to hunter than most classes when it comes to PvP and TBC. It's a class where it's easy to look average, but the skilled ones will make it seem unfair, if that makes sense. Finishing up on some tier gear then. For once, the dungeon set is really worth a mention, and that is Beast Lord. The 2 set is kind of whatever. But the 4 set is essentially permanent uptime on 600 armor penetration. To put it in perspective, the entire of tier 6, which has 8 pieces, has about 650 armor pen total. Armor pen is a scarce stat early game, but it improves your DPS disproportionately compared to other stats you can get your hands on, and the fact that you can pick this up whilst leveling through dungeons makes it even better. This set will put hunters on top of the meters early game easily until they look to replace it some way into tier 5. You really want to be looking into this 4 set and considering getting those dungeons into your leveling. It will be worth the time investment. Tier 4 is the Demon Stalker armor set. Now I'm going to be honest, the 2 and 4 set are both practically useless. Unless there is something out in TBC found like Diamond Tribute where Feign Death Resist really matter, the bonuses just aren't doing anything for you really. It looks awesome though, I still use it on retail for my Hunter Transmog. Tier 5 Rift Stalker, this is more like it. The 2 set means your pet is going to have near permanent full health. Again, not having to worry about the healers paying attention and more or less knowing that your pet won't die is a valuable bonus even though it's not giving you direct damage. The 4 set makes Steady Shot better, amazing. Steady Shot on autos by this time will be your rotation more or less, more crit, very good. Tier 6 Gron Stalker armor, 2 set more mana gains from Aspect of the Viper, it's okay, good on longer encounters for sure. The 4 set is 10%, a whole 10% more damage on your Steady Shot. Wow, that's incredible. Hunter's Tier 6 Prio. Once you get this bonus, at least for PvE, you practically remove every other shot from your bar and just go full macro mode. There we go then, that's a little look through the Hunter and some of their changes moving from Classic to TBC. But can we answer the Hunter? Is it any better now? For PvE? Yes, hugely better. With scaling issues gone and the burden of world buffs removed, they really start to come out strong from the day of TBC to the Wrath pre-patch. Hunters that put in the time and effort will be one of the consistent highest performance in PvE content. For PvP, I'd say they do improve, it's just the format of PvP changed from big open spaces to arenas and pillars, and that doesn't suit the Hunter too well, though they can still do fine, it's just not going to be a playstyle for everyone. And that's your Hunter. Of course, just like the Warlock, expect a lot of competition for gear. If the amount of players who picked Warrior in Classic is in any way indicative of how many people will play the class that can top the meters, there are going to be thousands of rerolls going on, I'm sure. Also, yeah, the whole one button rotation in PvE thing, that's not going to be for everybody. Then again, you don't have to use it, it's just an option for you. That about wraps it up though. Hit me up below if there's anything you would have liked to have seen included in the video. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you in the next one very soon.